I'm honored to be here today with one of the most amazing leadership experts in the world. I've worked with some of America's most amazing CEOs, and also across the globe I've worked with leaders of various companies, and writing and working with Lamar Smith has been an amazing experience. A few years ago, Lamar wrote this book, and he, at the time, was CEO of First Command Corporation. And First Command was a company in the financial industry that Lamar was chairman of for decades. So it was really interesting working with Lamar because I learned so much about leadership, culture, and before that I had worked with a lot of different CEOs, but you taught me the human element, the characteristics of leaders. And I'm just so glad to be sitting here with you today. You actually changed my life in a lot of ways through the process of talking through the book. And I learned about these amazing character traits of a leader. What would you say were the top traits of leaders?
Well, there are several that are key, Tammy, but first of all, there's a co-author listed on this book. You taught me a lot in the process, and it was a good collaboration, and it's always a pleasure to work with you. Traits of a leader. First of all, you have to be worth following. One of the interesting questions on leadership is who determines who the leader is? The thinking might be, well, the big boss who designates a person as a leader, gives them the job and gives them the title, gives them the office, they're the leader, right? Well, not really, not if no one's following them. Ultimately, the followers determine who the leader is. Followership is a gift that you earn by being worthy of it. And
true. That's
and
true.
Every organization has formal and informal leaders. The best organizations have an effective leader who coalesces the formal and the informal into a structure where everybody's pulling together.
That's a good way to look at it, because sometimes people have positional leadership where they're in a position, whether it's CEO or vice president or an executive position, and yet they're not respected, or they're not really listened to because of their dictatorship kind of style. So how does someone really see their blind spots as a leader? How do executives really know if they're excellent leaders? I found that the best way for me to think about it was to study the leaders in my life that made me want to follow them. What were the characteristics and the traits and the behaviors which caused me to want to emulate, follow, and support a good leader? And on the converse, the leaders that I'd had that were not compelling, that really made you want to kind of avoid them and shut down, what were those traits and characteristics? In other words, I went to school in the lab of my own experience, and I think any of us can do that. We have teachers, we have co-volunteers in nonprofit organizations, we have people in our life that exhibit behavior that you want to emulate, you want to be like them. What are those? And then how can you take your unique gifts and talents and your time and bring out those traits in yourself? That's great. And I always tell people that if they don't have a mentor, if they don't have that leader figure in their life, that they can go and get a book and they can read. And that's one of the things about your book that's so phenomenal, but many other leadership books exist. And then also, of course, today we can Google information on great leaders. If you had to choose one or two of the greatest leaders in the world to recommend that people kind of read about and follow, who would you suggest?
I can't wait to meet the Apostle Paul. And the reason I say that, I've had some dramatic turnarounds in my life. I've needed them. But you read the story of the Apostle Paul and the turnaround in his life. he was extremely high performance. He was capable, and he applied himself, and he was doing bad things to people. And then he met a life-changing force, and the message of Jesus Christ, and he turned around, and he started producing good results, and he is one of the most prolific authors in the Bible that brings the message of life change. I can't wait to meet him. He's an interesting character.
See, now I love that about you, that you really draw from all different sources, former, present. I mean, you look at not really results of a leader, but characteristics and traits of a leader. Both are so important, of course, but that message is so important for executives today to understand that if you've gone off track, you can turn around. There are examples of great leaders who have done that very thing, because sometimes we get so caught up in success and failure, but we all fail, we all succeed, and you can look to examples that will allow us to learn and grow. And that's one of the greatest things that I learned when working with you. And so will you tell me a little bit about what you're doing now with your new venture and your new corporation? I know you had maybe a year that, I don't know if you really retired, you kind of traveled with your wife, and you got your daughter married, and what are you doing today?
Well, life is busy. My primary focus are 3 nonprofits that operate in the Christian arena. Hope Farm, which is in Fort Worth. It's an after-school care program for inner-city boys who are at risk for gang activity. We formed it, I helped form it about 17 years ago. We have 55 boys in the program. We have a second campus, a staff of 12, and it's achieving real life change for these boys. And it interrupts the intergenerational pattern of crime and drugs and waste. And that's really exciting for me. Search Ministries is a national ministry that reaches out to adults who, in the workplace and in homes, it's parachurch, it's outside what I would call the stained glass aquarium, and it just takes the message that there are really good answers to the big questions of life, and it invites open forum kinds of formats and discussions to get people to take a look at the claims of the Bible and determine for themselves whether they're true or false. And then the Christian...
I can't wait, by the way, to visit Hope Farm.
Indeed.
And you're going to take me there soon, right?
We have that on the calendar.
I can't wait. Okay.
Yeah, you're in for a treat. It'll touch you. Okay. Christian Prayer Breakfast Fort Worth, we have coming up next month, a nationally ranked speaker coming in. We do it each year, and the business leaders and many leaders of Fort Worth will gather and hear an inspirational message and pray for our leadership, our nation, our state, and our city. We expect about 2,200 plus attendees at this particular breakfast, and it's catered by the famous Dallas caterer Eddie Dean. It's a very good breakfast as well. Good. So we feed lots of things.
Good, wonderful, mind, body, and soul.
That's right.
And that's what is so unique about you as a leader. I experienced that you are so focused on teaching men and women balance, and not just the buzzword balance, but mind, body, soul. Really how to be healthy in all areas of their life. And I think that's the main message that you really get across so well to executives.
Well, you know, it's legend that somebody, particularly men, are focused on their career, and so they really work on their career and achieve success. In their 50s, they get into the corner office, they're the big boss, they're the CEO. They've ruined their health. They've got heart disease. They're divorced. Their children hate them. There's a wake of human carnage behind them of interrupted relationships and disappointment. But they're in the corner office, and then they die early of a heart attack. Would you call that success?
No. That is why interrupting that pattern, like you did with your book, and like you always do when you speak, talking to men about how they can be healthier, how they can stop and say, hey, what am I missing? What's most important in my life right now? And one thing that a lot of people don't know about you is that you are a very highly decorated officer in the military, Air Force pilot, many awards and flying crosses. Is that how you say it? How do you say it? And hearts, silver hearts, and oh my gosh! And books have been written about you. And you know, not only were you a hero in search and rescue, rescuing people on the ground back then, that today you're still so focused in your heart on search and rescue, whether it's the executive or the boys at Hope Farm. And you're still inspired to do that. What would you say to someone else? Because I get this from CEOs all the time. They want to write a book because they want to leave a legacy, or they want to give back, but they don't know how. What would you tell them to do?
Figure out I would say to them, figure out what you've learned that has benefited you, your biggest turnarounds, and be authentic and put your heart into it and be honest, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then what you learned, what caused you to learn it, that you wish someone had taught you earlier and you could have learned the lesson more cheaply.
Right.
I've got a friend that prays for his children to learn the big lessons of life as inexpensively as possible.
That's good.
We all learn more from our mistakes and our failures and remember those lessons longer than we do from our successes. And it's just a human characteristic. Let's back up for a moment about balance. We all have so much busyness in our life today. I think the internet and communication channels and so forth, it says you know you're alive in 2014 when you've got 6 phone numbers and you don't answer any of them. We all have all of this going on, this cacophony of things demanding our attention. And it's easy to spend your day just responding to what's going on. It's difficult not to do that. And so trying to take this ball of yarn that is life today, if you start pulling it apart, I have found a way of thinking about it is to divide the human experience into 5 parts. You want to look out for your intellectual well-being. You want to think about the processes that drive that. Your reading, your exercise, which actually bathes the brain in oxygen. It's the most genetically active site in the body, and you've got to take care of that. Your heart, your emotional well-being. It's what makes life worth living. It's where love and intense feelings and so forth, that's where that resides. Your physical body. If you don't have your health, you don't have much. So use it or lose it. Take care of yourself. Those kinds of things. Your financial well-being. You can't ignore money, and it won't take in every American household, single people, married people, groups of any size, money will either be a strength or a weakness. Look at what drives success in the financial arena and manage your money well so that it is not a distraction and you're not always just ahead of the bill collectors and feeling badly about yourself. And then the part that really matters, because we are eternal beings, we're going to spend eternity somewhere. Pay attention to your spiritual health. And that's where you ask yourself the big questions of life. Who can I believe? What is true? What do you really want to build your life on? Supposition and guesses, or do you want to really study what is true and what you can believe? So you take those 5 parts, each of them has the power to drag down the hole if you completely ignore it. And if you've got problems in 2 areas, you really need help. And many people do. But likewise, they have, each of these 5 parts have the power to, if you really make progress and have success in any one of those areas, it empowers you because you realize, hey, I have a free will. I can make choices. I can have progress and success in each of these areas. So you just keep, it's the wheel of life. You just keep looking at those 5 areas. You look at your life through those wheels.
I love it when you speak 5 quadrants, I call them, because it's almost a reminder. We all need this reminder from time to time that, hey, I'm strong here, but I'm a little weak here, and the wheel's going to be lopsided. You know, it's that's brilliant.
We have to take responsibility for managing this ourselves. Nobody's going to do it for us. And it really is the use of time, and life and time are the same thing. Time is the fabric that life is made of. And if you're wasting your time, if you're not thoughtfully using your time, then two things happen. One is you're not living your life well, and two, as a leader, you're not worth following.
That's great. That's wisdom right there. That's wisdom.
It's scar tissue is what it is.
Scar tissue, yeah. Well, I thank you so much for again being with us today.
You bet.
And
Always.
I just love your leadership. I think you're the perfect example of what a leader is, not only as an executive to the world, but as a father and a husband. You're a wonderful leader of your family, and you've been a great role model for me personally, and now for everyone out there. Thanks for joining us today.
You're mighty kind, Tammy. I'm not what I ought to be and not what I want to be in the future, but I am thankful to God that I'm not what I used to be.
That's great. That's true. That's great.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.